when you were building something in a sandbox game, have you ever wanted to try and see how far can you push the optimization of that thing until you reach the limits of the game itself? Well, this is it for storage systems in Minecraft. This is the ultimate storage system, version 8, which was a project started by the Prototech server to create a storage that would in many ways be still a conventional design, which is a hallway that displays you containers with items. However, you don't use all the latest technology like binary encoding, minimization of tile entities and similar things to reduce the lag that it causes and improve the density of items in the hallway. So let's go over that first. This thing here in the middle is effectively the hallway or the interface for the storage system. You would stand on this glass. You would have these wool blocks that represent the indicator blocks telling you what item is where. So for example, this white wool would mean something that would be represented by this and be stored in the shulker box here. You would then open it. You could take out items from it, press a button, and get it replaced. This sounds fairly simple. However, if you realize there are 8 of these things in a single 1 block wide slice, and just by standing here in the middle, I can reach all of them, even in survival? That sounds a little harder, right? Well, what if I would tell you that that's not even everything? The next part would be how to reduce the amount of droppers, hoppers, and similar laggy components needed to do this. Because sure, having 8 items in a single slice means, for example, if you want to have 200 different items, you would only need 25 blocks of this in length, which is incredibly short compared to most designs. But, well, Adam, this is done by your super simple storage system, right? So what's the deal with this? This not only limits the laggy blocks, similar to the super simple storage, but also has some of this weird circuitry here, which I'm going to explain to you now. If you have looked closely, these chests here are filled by items that send a signal by this comparator into some further circuitry. And what this means is as long as this chest here is full, nothing really significant happens, right? That's to be expected. Every time I press this button, you would expect to get a new box. 3 of them disappeared, as many as I did button presses. However, what happens when we have none left? This goes through such a T flip-flop, basically a setup that sends a signal once when this deactivates, and when it activates it doesn't send anything. Through this wire down here, and one signal goes into this wire, and the next into this binary encoder. This is a significant change over the previous version, where we had just a giant set of these really tall encoders. Now we have only this 9 line 1, effectively accounting for 9 bits, and these 8 single lines. This not only reduces lag significantly, but also allows us to not have to build so much. If you are wondering why there is a gap here, that's because these would be instant wires. If you don't know much about real instant wires, you should look them up. They don't need the observer to be like this to get powered, or rather changing their state, because they are budded. They are basically powered and only wait for a block update, which this observer delivers. Same here. And now we get this signal at the end of the storage system that, okay, one of these chests here is empty. Of course, to transfer this into a proper binary signal, we would need 3 of these things and at the end of each of these lines, which is still a significant improvement instead of triggering 3 of them every single time we trigger the refilling. I already kind of spoiled what it will do, but when we get the signal outside of the storage, there is going to be an unloaded bulk storage, as I showed in one of my older videos. That is a system that will receive a binary signal, and then, depending on how it's programmed, will send back the proper amount of items. In this case, it will be 54 shulker boxes from a storage that will be somewhere in the unloaded chunks. That's why this thing also looks so strange at first glance. There is no water in this. There is even this hopper line, because this will be made to be working primarily in the nether to avoid a few steps of an interface to transfer a signal between nether and overworld, since we found out that having a couple dozen hoppers is way less laggy than that interface running in the background, since it requires a bunch of entities going through portals quite rapidly. This unloaded system has the advantage that it will be outside of the loaded chunk, so technically it has no limits on capacity relative to lag. No matter how many blocks of I don't know, whatever type you would put in there in item form, in, for example, shulker boxes, it will never affect the performance of your server until one of these slices is loaded. And that means we can effectively have a storage for one single item type, let's say in this case redstone dust, to be only loaded. So in a normal traditional storage system, you would load the machine and you would also load a bulk storage or some sort of larger enough interface that holds all the items. However, in this, you would only load that one part for that one item type whenever you empty a double chest or the capacity, or you can adjust this. This is quite adjustable in many ways, especially since in the future I'll probably change a lot of details about this. Since nobody really can tell me how much items you guys want to have. You might want to have 2 double chests or 5 of them, or even just a single barrel of items, or even a single dropper. For example, Hub was using for his initial designs the assumption we will only request 1 box at a time. Even that is a possibility. So once we do that request to this unloaded thing, it will load a huge bulk storage in one chunk of space, since that's what all it really needs to load. It loads some around it, but those are not the same quality of being loaded, if I should call it that way. It has to do with entity processing, and I won't bother you too much with that. It will just load that bulk storage, get us the boxes, and now through these dropper lines here at the top, of course dropper lines because again we can't use water in the nether, it will start sending the items back into this double chest. However, for that to happen, you probably have noticed this comparator here locks this hopper, so that will not go in. So what will happen is this signal will be sent. However, the unloaded thing will have quite a struggle to keep up with this, because you might get a case where someone runs in empties, I don't know, 10 item types in like 2 seconds, and suddenly you need to refill all of them. So there's going to be a small, basically binary queue, something that will simply store the signals and pop them one by one when the storage is done. It's a really simple design. And once that signal is popped, it means the unloaded bulk is ready to refill a different item type. And then it will send the signal into these binary decoders that will be able to tell that open up this slice. And of course it will send the items into the appropriate dropper line. Or possibly all of them, depending on the wiring. We'll probably have the optimization to only trigger 1/8 of the dropper lines, but that's technically not necessary. It will still be insanely optimized. What then happens is all of these composers here, you can use cauldrons in older versions, will get moved. So let me show that. And the entire slice will get unlocked. You can see all of these are now unlocked, so the items can go in. And once this happens, the items can start refilling into the double chest. And once the thing is done, all it would do is it would send the signal again. It's really as simple as that. What it allows us to do is have a system where you are technically walking through a hallway, but you have access to unlimited storage capacity. The only limiting factor is how fast you can refill it. And since we have 8 dropper input lines and we can split this into smaller parts, it is usually way faster than anyone can empty it. Of course, not instantly, but this can be loaded using portal loaders overnight and refill. So there is basically not an issue with this, since if you do the math, refilling this at 1 box every 8 game ticks means you will have about 15 million items per hour of refill. So that should be enough. And since these are double chests, that's 2 inventories full of boxes of that item, which should be enough for short-term use. You may have noticed these dropper lines are slightly weird with this repeater here, which I accidentally clicked on for game ticks. These will be just double speed dropper lines, where you are going to alternate the signals like this from a observer line and a repeater line with a 1 game tick offset in between. This makes it so that the item stays in each dropper only for 1 game tick instead of 2, as you would do it commonly. Which means the items travel twice as fast, and that just makes it far more responsive to emptying this, since you don't need to wait as long. Still, it's comically fast. Like, I'm talking about here like, oh, it will take so long and not so long. That's unbelievably fast. You will never be able to use up the items nearly as fast as this thing refills. Like, even dozens of people placing blocks at the maximum possible rate will not be enough to even come close to the refilling speed of this. So now let's go over what has drastically changed over the previous design. First of all, these interface parts are more optimized with even less droppers. We changed this from sending one full set of bits to sending these unary signals and this binary set, reducing lag. Also, it became far less daunting to build because, well, you don't have such a massive aperture to try and construct. Like some of the older USS designs were quite gigantic. It is still, I don't really think, worth building a quad hallway. I think just having one length hallway is still better. You can do it, but it's kind of wide for that. You could try and make it slightly less wide. But really, at this sort of density, it kind of doesn't matter too much. Since even for hundreds of items, you will have this only a few blocks long. And that means you don't need to worry about people not knowing where certain items are and taking the wrong turn. Another slight optimization was, well, realizing this will be built in the Nether and not even going to bother with some of the details. We also found out that having the cable walls here doesn't help much. And we simply just decided it is at worst going to lose a few boxes. And that's because in the latest versions, we can simply farm shulker boxes. So unless someone would for some reason press these buttons even when the shulker box is not fully empty, which is kind of weird to do, like you might as well throw them in a cactus then, in some cases. Thankfully, like 99+% will land in this hopper, but the 1% will just accept the losses. Since it's really not worth it to make this more laggy just to account for that. You could build this in the overworld. If you would then hook it up to a non-unloaded bulk storage. And then use water streams, have water flowing down here, and so on, so the boxes will not ever stop at, for example, the edge of this block here and despawn. Another thing that has made this kind of, how to say it, most likely the last version of the USS, at least for the foreseeable future until some significant thing changes in Minecraft or I don't know, something along those lines, or someone asks me to build something else with the same name, is because I'm not going to continue doing this for the Prototech server. It is a long story, and I'm not going to share details. I hope that other people are going to do the same, and we can just keep this nice and quiet. I will still have access, hopefully, to the creative server. If not, I get another one. Worst case scenario. Also, you guys don't need to worry about the clickbaity title anymore, since the word ultimate was not made by me. That was the name Raceworks gave it a very long time ago, and we just kept the name for the storage so we could differentiate it from other projects more easily. And also another thing, the storage technology has kind of stagnated recently, very significantly. Mostly it seems that nobody is really interested in these giant storage systems that are completely optimized. And it seems to me, going back to some of the more simpler designs, because a lot of things have changed recently. and we can get a new update any month now that will completely make this obsolete. Just to mention a few technologies, thankfully it didn't affect this one, that have changed. We have figured out the stuff about separating items from each other in a water stream. We have figured out ways how to use minecarts, because Mojang changed that you can now break a minecart and collect it in one piece. You don't get a chest and a minecart, you get minecart with chest when you break it. And a few other significant details. For example, redstone was significantly optimized. The redstone dust is now not nearly as horrible, while rails got much worse. They are still thankfully better than redstone dust, so I don't need to rework this entire thing. But the difference between them is nowhere near significant. They also changed that droppers and other tile entities are not as laggy as in the past, because in the past all of them were stored in a giant array list, and whenever you moved a block and created a block 36, it would lag the server like crazy, because all the loaded droppers in a really big storage would be in this list that the program would have to go over. This is why you have seen some people make the meme about some of my older storages, like, ah, haha, dropper storage. And it's kind of still true, but nowhere near to the extent as it was previously, because Mojang did finally some slight optimizations. Also things like accidentally causing update suspension, or how to properly call it, when you have a too long instant wire, is no longer nearly as an issue as it was in the past, where we had to design these instant wires very carefully. And a few other things regarding also new items and so on that have been added that really, I think, demotivated people to try and build such massive storage systems. And also the original requirements, and more importantly, the people who made the original requirements for this storage are no longer even in our server, and the existing players, at least from what I was told, seem to not be nearly as interested in this. Like, we have people that think that the temporary storage system we have right now is going to be more than enough for the coming many years, which could technically be the case. And there is also, since it works now after a lot of fixes to it, however, I'm not really supporting this idea much, and I'm kind of sad about it. But I have to be reasonable, and since nobody really wants this, I'm probably not going to continue with it, since I'm not going to build this solo in some sort of custom base somewhere. That's why I'm also recently making some of the more simpler designs of just box loaders and the super simple storage system. And there's also been the development of the basically binary or hexadecimal or octal interface I showed in the video, where you can just use a texture pack to rename items and then have a call system. For example, Hub is a huge fan of that and often suggested to not even bother with this anymore, because the idea to even have a hallway basically came from people wanting to have it, rather than it having some sort of obvious advantage. For example, you might have seen Activation claim that anything that doesn't have double chests visible is a bad storage. He doesn't even like the box displays, not to mention anything like a call system. I also changed a few details to make this slightly more accessible with the trapdoors, because I always forget when I make these videos about the little details. So yeah, I'm not going to stop making storage tech, but this is probably going to be the last USS design. If you see me making other storage systems, they will probably be called something different. I hoped I would have changed the world a little bit with this. Seems the world is a little too ignorant to be changed by this, which is fine. At the end of the day, this is mostly made for fun. And it kind of became less and less fun over the years. So I hope I explained everything to you when it comes to the ultimate storage system. I hope future geniuses of making storage will learn from this and come up with designs I can't even imagine. And yeah, it was a great project. I had a lot of fun. And please like, share, comment, whatever you want. And have a nice day.